And we're back with some more Tokyo Xtreme Racer. Now, in today's part, I was going to start off by getting the last of the engine upgrades in the tuning thing, but I guess I accidentally did that off screen. So I already had it purchased when I came back to my save. But the good thing is there was one other thing that I kind of realized by surprise as I was coming back to this menu, that there's a Type 7 exhaust. So I went ahead and stuck that right onto the car, and now this Impreza is making a very nice 515 horsepower, so it should be fairly quick as we head back out to tackle the first of the two teams that we're going to be focusing on in this part. First up, from Fine Drive, we have Drift Baby, claims to be the best of the 2000cc racers. Well, it's very easy to claim the best, but are you really the best? Usually quiet, but gets excited when talking about cars. Sounds like me, basically. I'm usually a quiet person for the most part. When I talk about cars, I tend to get a little more excited. Unfortunately, I wish I was a little more bit in the technical know-how with cars and whatnot, because some of the people I know are very experienced with this sort of thing, you know, working on cars and whatnot, and sadly I don't have that same experience. I've never been able to do that, so unfortunately I kind of feel like a bit of a loner when it comes to that sort of thing. Oh well. But yeah, you shouldn't be surprised. It's the first win, and that's going to be how this whole part goes. Next up we have here is Firebird. No, it's not a Firebird. It's another red S14, a reserve city racer who has an as yet untapped inner power. Well, it must definitely be as yet because, well, if it was inner power, you'd probably be a little bit higher up the food chain rather than, you know, being an early member of Fine Drive appeared. Although technically, to be, as far as I know with this game, they members, I think for the most part, tend to appear in a mostly random order, I think. Maybe some might only show up at certain points, but at least from my experience, or at least from my memory's sake, I think it's really just up in the air, I think, for the most part. But that's fine. I also might be noticing that I'm trying to kind of pace myself a little bit better through recording for voice for this part, because I do have the tendency to go a little bit quickly, so I'm trying to kind of ease myself a bit more to hopefully make what I'm saying a little bit easier to understand, and also so that I'm not stumbling over my words as much, because I have a huge tendency to do that way too fucking often. Anyways, next we have here is an S13 Shimo Kitazawa 2000cc. He drives nothing but S13s, currently on his third, and loves them more than anything in the world. Ah yes, back in the days of 1999 where S13s were relatively affordable. In 2020, that certainly is not the case anymore, because how the markets have changed since then. Very unfortunate if you think about it, just kind of how inflation and stuff tends to change over time. But, you know, sometimes it just be like that, and you kind of just have to work with it. Who knows whether or not things will change. Another S13 now, Hell's Drifter. Used to be an off-road racer, regarded as being the master of drift control. If you'd be the master of drift control, would that mean you're Keiichi Tsuchiya? You know, the founding father of what we kind of know now as drifting. Because, you know, it takes some know-how to be able to do drifting in order to be considered a master at it. I mean, maybe that's just how I look at it. Maybe I'm just a complete idiot. Who knows? But at least that's kind of the way I deciphered about in my head. And yes, loving just the ability to just bounce off the walls like nothing. Always funny to just see how easy it is to do so in this game. Definitely can't do that in the second game, as you will find out. Because yes, I am going to be redoing that game as well. Back to an S14 now. Natural Born Soldier originally was not interested in racing, but is slowly learning to enjoy it. The question I have for this person and is, how exactly did you start racing if you weren't that interested originally? What kind of gave them the push to go and race? If you weren't very interested in it back then, why exactly would it be a thing you would, you know, do? Maybe I don't know. Of course, maybe I don't know. I'm looking into this too much in what's basically a video game for a throwaway rival, because most of the rivals in this game are throwaways, unless they're, you know, significant team members or team leaders or bosses or yada yada yada. Anyways, we won that one, as you expect. Another S14 now. It's Funky Monkey. Looks down on all cars except FR models. Hasn't lost a race for an entire year. If you've not lost a race for an entire year, I would say you're probably bound to be a very good driver, and maybe, just maybe, you should be higher up the food chain. Then again, maybe the fact that you're also biased against anything that is not a rear-wheel drive car, excuse me, might have some people frowning at you. Just saying. Of course, who am I to know? I'm just a commentator, commentating over footage of a game I've already played just before doing this commentary. Yeah, I know it's been a couple days since I did get Part 3 out. Kind of mess of scheduling and other conflicts came up. I wanted to make sure I got this one out now when I did, so you guys really didn't have to wait a long time or anything, because I really want to stop doing that as much. Back to an S13 this time, Sylvester! Just looking for a new rival to challenge his skills. Nothing else needs to be said. Nice and simple. Sylvester, yeah, pretty much a yellow S13. That is a rather prolific member of Fine Drive, like one, not the only one, but a prolific enough member that you will be seeing that sort of yellow Sylvia multiple times throughout the series, throughout this game's franchise, basically. But the good news is, it still means that we can easily take him down, because we do have this Impreza, after all, that's pumping out a lot of power. And yeah, whilst it still is a bit of a struggle to get this thing going more than 155, it gets there so quick now that it really does not feel like that much of a struggle. And plus the tune that I put on in the last part, thanks to the likes of Jake MR2, has certainly helped out this car a lot. Anyways, boss time. It's Red Comet, who's renowned for his control, wishes to become a pro racer. If by pro racer you mean taking it to the track, then I respect the hell out of you for that. Also, the second case of seeing an S15 Sylvia in this game. Yes, it's not just that one member of the four Devas, whatever, that drives the S15 Sylvia. It's also the leader of Fine Drive that has one as well. But of course, instead of being a black S15, it's a red S15, hence the name Red Comet. See how that works? Of course, you didn't need me to point that out, I'm sure, but you know, it's just how things work, you know. But the good news is whilst you could see that I was really kind of screwing up a lot during this particular run. I was making a lot of like really dumb mistakes, just bouncing off of cars and whatnot. So you can tell that once you just stop doing stuff like that with a car like where I have this Impreza now, still not really a sweat at this point. Still all good. And with that, it's down. Now, that's one team down. It's time to move on to the next team for this part, which is going to be Twister. As we start with a Shooting Star and a blue RX-7. And yes, just like Fine Drive, you're going to see a theme with the kind of vehicles that Twister drives. Of course you would, right? A Shooting Star is a racer of average skill, learned how to race in the city following other team members' example. So basically, you can kind of see Shooting Star very much as a bit of a junior, really. It's just someone who's kind of building up a bit, and that's fine. You know, some people are you know, you're getting newer to it and are trying to figure out where exactly their level of skill is and how to kind of fit in with everybody else. And that's what Shooting Star, to me, from that description, seems to define very much right to a T. But the good news is, it just means we get more of an advantage to us. Although I will say Shooting Star did put up a little bit more of a fight. And I mean, 3,249 CP, I think, probably a good way to show just exactly how that is. I don't even know what I'm trying to say there. There's another FD-RX-7, a white one this time, the Duke. A rich official has spent a lot of money on his car, but it's not that good of a driver. So we have someone who's more of a new person, who's trying to build themselves, and then we got someone who has put a lot into their car, but really can't use that car to their advantage. So, okay, that did not pick up as well on the mic as I hoped it would. That's one of the downsides of using the noise cancellation stuff like RTX Voice, which is now merged into NVIDIA Broadcast. So, anyways, just kind of have to work with it. But the good news is, we still won. Despite, I don't even know. Anyways, now on to an FC. It's Sweet Blues in all capital letters. Why does this... Excuse me. Why does this rival have all capital letters? I have no idea why. But what I do know is it has a natural aptitude for racing, but lacks experience. Starting to think that most of Twister is not particularly a very strong team. Seems like we have a lot of members who are either not experienced or just not good. Now keep in mind, Twister is only 6 members compared to the 8 that we just faced with Fine Drive. And there you can see a bit of brain fartage from me. In fact, the autopilot even picked up from me there. But I was still so far ahead enough that it really didn't matter. We still got the win. And by the way, it's not going to be the last time you see a racer with all caps in their name. Again, I don't know why that is. It's just how they did it. Another FCRX7, this time in black. It is, I'm going to try and say this correctly, Smile:Yen0. That's what I get from reading it. Smile:Yen0. Not exactly sure what that's supposed to mean, but that's what I'm reading. There's a racer who is famous in West Japan, moved to East Japan over a year ago. If you're a bit famous in West Japan, and you move over to East Japan, shouldn't there... I mean, I know East Japan might not have the know-how, but shouldn't you be at least a little bit more than just a team member for another team? Maybe with the kind of fame, you could have probably easily made your own team. I don't know how it works, so don't look into it too much. We got one more FCRX7 here. This time a bit of a nice light blue one. Blue Rider. It's not that fast, but hates to lose, is particular about how he wins. See, a lot of the racers here with Twister, apparently, according to the game, they're not that great. Smile::Yen0 was maybe the only one kind of exempt from that. But at the same time, it just seems it's also... They didn't exactly say, you know, how good they were, just that they were famous. So I don't know why this game kind of gave Twister the kind of the cold treatment for how they thought the skill members of their drivers were, but that's what seems to be the case here. Oh well, that's just how it's done, I guess. But the good news is, that's the last member, and now it's time for the leader. Shimmering Illusion, back to an FDRX7, this time in red, has impressive skills. And over a long career, has almost supernatural control. So basically, in other words, you're very familiar with the cars you've driven, that you're very good at driving them, control-wise. I'm not sure supernatural is the correct word for it. Maybe I'm just a bit of an asshole too, who knows. But yeah, one thing I will say too, in regards to this video series, is I do not ever plan to play through this game the way I have for this series again. For the simple reason that I've been trying to focus specifically on going through the specific teams kind of in order, not so much about when certain team members appear, because that would make it even worse. But what I'm trying to say is, because in this game the way the rivals show up is completely random to an extent for how they show up, I have to cut out like usually 20 to 30 minutes of footage of me just driving around. Sometimes even closer to an hour of footage, just to cut out stuff of me getting to those rivals because of my insistence of doing it this way. I do not plan on playing it again like this. I'm just going to play as how they show up for the sake of my sanity. But because I wanted to do it for this series, I'm going to stick to it despite that. Anyways, so now we got the last member of the 4 Devas to go against, Banshee, with a custom NSX. He's the possessor of the fastest lap speed on the highway. No one has ever seen him when driving except from behind. Now, I got a hunch here. If you're the possessor of the fastest lap speed on the highway, shouldn't you be one of the final bosses to go against? Because if you're faster than everybody else, I would imagine you'd probably be like an end boss territory at that. Because it means there are other bosses to come after you who might not be as fast. Try to work that one around a little bit. Also worth noting, little bonus fact, the logo for Banshee was actually changed from the Japanese version, because on the forehead of a skull is a swastika in the Japanese version. You can guess why it was removed in the other versions. Anyways, replay time. I'll catch you in a bit. Now, normally if you were to keep racing, prior to this, you'd just be back to the racing. But because we've defeated all the 4 Devas at this point, it kind of throws a little bit of this at us, telling us, congratulations! You fought your way to the top and left many behind, but blink an eye and you will be taken down. More racers await as rival import tuners continue their challenges. Again, this is in Tokyo, this is not import. Ugh. Whatever. Anyways, I would play through the whole thing, but that's credits, and I don't want to do that until the very end of the LP, so we're just gonna move on from there. Once you go back into the menus, it automatically takes you to the save screen. And as you can see here, as we go back to the rivals, there are now the 4 devils that await us. These are the second tier of bosses, and trust me, they get difficult. But before I end this part off, we're going to go to the car screen because we unlocked some new vehicles. We've unlocked the AP1, which is, of course, a Honda S2000, and we can now buy our own S15 Nissan Silvia. Basically, you probably expected this, at least on the Silvia front, but not the S2000 because we've not come across anyone yet with an S2000. But don't worry, we will soon enough. There is someone who does drive an S2000. We just haven't gotten to them yet. And of course, as you can see here, all the other cars are still here as normal. You probably could have guessed that, of course. But that's going to do it for today's part. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, you know what to do. Hit like and hit subscribe. Check out my other links down below. Check out the Patreon if you want to help support the channel out. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all on the next video.